Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Michelle and I am here with update number 4 for kicking the rest of 2020 in the butt. Today is Sunday. It's December 20th, 2020, and here in California at 2:02 a.m. Pacific time, so actually tomorrow, December 21st, but during the night tonight, is the winter solstice. And it's when we start this new incredible period. It's a 2,000-year period. We're moving out of the age of Pisces, moving into the age of Aquarius. And those malefic planets, or at least one of them, they are moving into Aquarius. So Saturn and Jupiter moving out, and they will not be so close together, moving out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. If you look at the night sky tonight or tomorrow, you can see Saturn and Jupiter aligned, and it's gonna look like the Star of Bethlehem. So I think that's really special, and I just wanted to point that out to you guys. So at sunset tonight, that you go ahead and look at the night sky, and you can see the brightest star that isn't even a star at all. It's actually the planets together, and they're literally on top of one another. I wanted to talk to you guys about the update for this week. So it is December 20th. We are in week 4, I think, of this 5-week kicking the rest of 2020 in the butt. We've got 11 more days in December. Now that doesn't mean that this challenge stops. It means that this current 35-day challenge can now be fulfilled and perhaps transformed into something else. I wanted to give you guys my updates on what's been happening in this past week. Now, of course, as I mentioned in the last video, we started the challenge on a Thursday, which was Thanksgiving, and I myself started it on Thanksgiving. And in fact, I started the day before because I actually filmed the day before. I'm doing Thursday to Wednesdays of each week. So in fact, the challenge for me for the past week that I'm going to talk about, or started, I guess, the new week on Thursday. So it ended on last Wednesday, which is a few days ago, but I'm going to give you my updates. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we here in Southern California are in our 3rd week of total quarantine again. That's why I'm filming from my balcony here, and you can see I'm in beautiful sunny Southern California. The sky is blue, the sun is shining. It's actually quite warm today. I'm in long sleeves, but it's a little warm for long sleeves today. The high today is going to be 74 degrees, which I'm very blessed, super duper blessed to be here in Southern California and to be here among the wonderful weather, being so close to nature, being so close to the ocean. I feel very blessed. And in a minute, I'm going to give you guys the update of my 5 commitments, and I hope that you've been following your 5 commitments. And in the last video, what I mentioned to you is that it's about progress and not perfection. Of course, none of us are perfect. We are human beings, so none of us are perfect. But it's about progress. It's about making the commitment to yourself for you and your life, making the commitment to yourself to do something better for yourself each and every day. This is about loving yourself. It's about committing to yourself. It's about committing to your life and not just letting time pass you by with excuses. Now, thinking and pondering this concept of excuses. Today I was working out, I was doing some weightlifting, and I had this notion of everybody during quarantine should be fit by the end of quarantine, because what is the #1 excuse that most people have to not get fit? And if getting fit, losing some weight, getting more buff is on your commitment list, which I know for many of us it is, then you have absolutely no excuse. The #1, I've been a fitness trainer since I was 18 years old, believe it or not. So I started really early as a fitness trainer, doing all sorts of different things: step aerobics, high impact aerobics, low impact aerobics. I've taught bar fitness, yoga, all the above, a lot of different fitness aspects. I was a personal trainer in my 20s. The #1 excuse that most people give is I don't have the time. I don't have the time. That is the number one excuse that I have heard over the course of the years as a fitness trainer. And let me tell you now, in 2020, all we have had is time. So if you are not fit by the end of 2020, if you're not fit by the end of quarantine, and that is one of your commitments. I'm not saying it's everybody's commitment, because it might not be a commitment for you. But if it is one of your commitments, then you have no excuse. The only reason you're not fit is because you're not getting off your butt. You're not, to put it politely, I was going to say something else, but you are not getting off your butt. You're not getting your couch off this chair, off the butt. You're not motivating yourself. That is the only excuse, because it can't be money. Money is not an excuse at all. I always say, if you have feet, then you have no excuse. And even if you don't have feet, you still don't have an excuse. Because let me tell you this, my best client, seriously, one of my best clients throughout the years started at 90 years old. And she is an amazing woman. She has now passed over, but she was an amazing woman. She started with me at 90 years old, and she had come home from the hospital. She had a bout of pneumonia, and she had a very, very close brush with death at age 90 in the hospital with pneumonia. Her daughter, who had taken some yoga with me at my studio, called me and asked if I could do some breath work with her. So I went to her house 2 days a week for 3 years, and I started with breath work. Now, her daughter also wanted me to be able to do movement with her because, of course, if you have crap in your lungs, you want to get that out, and movement is the way you move toxins out of your body. So I had to be really creative, and I had taught chair yoga before, but I started chair yoga with this 90-year-old woman who could barely move and barely breathe. And she, the entire time, the 3 years, the entire time, she was on a breathing tube. So, you know, the tubes in your nose, and she had an oxygen tank next to her. But thanks to the yoga and movement, the breathing, the yoga, the movement, she was able to decrease her oxygen need by 1 liter per day, which was enormous at that time. But when I started working with her at age 90 in a chair, she could barely lift her legs. She could barely lift her arms. And by the end, at age 93, she was doing the movements, the chair yoga movements, faster than I was doing the movements. I was like, slow down. We're not in a race here. Come on, you need to slow down. And I actually got her to working with light weights. She was working with 2 to 3 pound weights as well from a chair at age 93. So if you are not meeting your fitness goal, your goal to get fit, your goal to get thin, your goal to lose some weight, your goal to get buff, whatever it is, if that is your commitment, if those are one of your goals, you have absolutely no excuse during 2020. You have no excuse. And if you have made excuses for yourself, if you've been too lazy to get off the couch for yourself, then now's the time. You can start now. Now is the time. Today. There is no better day than the present moment, the present day. There is no better moment. So start today. There is absolutely positively no excuse. You have all the time in the world, especially now in 2020. And even if you're working from home and teaching kids from home, just know that, like, before you had a commute, before you had to physically go to work, or you had this hour-long commute or 30-minute commute, and now that commute's gone, use that time. Use that time to get fit, do whatever it takes. And now with YouTube, obviously for the past 12 years or 13 years that YouTube has been around, we doubly have no excuse, because every fitness video on the planet is on YouTube. You can find any kind of fitness training on YouTube, so there's really no excuse there. But I do want to talk to you about, and this is something that has affected me throughout 2020, and I know it doesn't seem that way. I'm like a super upbeat person, but you know, this mild blues, mild depression has like plagued me, as well as so many people throughout 2020, especially being isolated, being away from other people. And what I want to do with you with that is if that's the case for you in 2020, if being isolated, being alone, being away from family, being away from friends, being quarantined, if that has been an issue for you, like these mild blues, I'm not talking about severe depression. You know what to do if there's severe depression going on. There are doctors, mental health professionals to help you with that. Of course, reach out. But I'm just talking about those mild blues, the mild depression that's happening as a result of being isolated, as a result of being alone. And that has affected me too. I'm not immune to that. And in fact, what I want to let you guys know is that that is totally normal. The fact that you are mildly blue or mildly depressed because of being alone, being isolated from other people, is a normal human response. That means you're healthy. I just want to let you know that. That means you are a healthy human being. It doesn't mean you're mentally ill. It doesn't mean you're sick. It means that you're a healthy human being. And here is why. And in my book, I just wanted to read to you this little passage because this is a book that I published. Let me just look. I don't even know now when I published this book. It's not my best-selling book. In 2018, I published this book. This is the most researched. It's called Enlightened Medicine, Your Power to Get Well Now. There you go. And this is the most researched book I have done to date. And when I say it's the most researched book, it means that, wow, I read over 200 to 300 articles and books to put the research into this book. The reference section is probably about 20 to 30 pages long. So this is a really, really well-researched book. But I wanted to read to you this paragraph in my chapter on emotional life and emotional health. And it says, according to John Casipio, author of Loneliness, Human Nature, and the Need for Social Connection, when we feel excluded from a group or feel socially isolated, our brain goes into self-preservation mode. Initially, we crave connection just as much as the physiological need for food and water. But as time goes on, the area in the brain responsible for empathy becomes less active. Because social isolation was a tribal response from members who didn't perform according to socially acceptable standards, our brain is hardwired to not seek out re-entry back into a group after long periods of isolation. Since depression is a symptom of social isolation, it can make it even more difficult for a person to be self-motivated to get back into social connection. That's when we need to look out for one another. Take an elderly neighbor out for dinner once in a while, or call a friend who's recently gotten divorced. But I just wanted to let you know that our brains are still relatively primitive, and you don't change a brain immediately. So our tribal state, like the state of us living in a group, in tribes, and we had to because of survival. And in fact, our brains are still hardwired. We're social creatures. We are social animals. Our brains are still hardwired for community. So the brain does not develop and change over hundreds of years. It changes over thousands of years. So the fact that it's relatively new in our current society, in the past century perhaps, that we are living more isolated lives first and foremost, because in olden days, for example, just days of old, and this is just, we're talking like 100 years ago or less, maybe 80 years ago, that children stayed with their parents until they got married and left the home, but then they had their own family. So it's a recent phenomenon, A, that we would leave home, that we would live in social isolation, that we would even live alone. And B, 2020 has exacerbated that with the fact that social isolation is not normal. It's actually not the norm. So the fact that you might be feeling mildly depressed, you might be feeling mildly sad or have the blues because of the social isolation, it's a normal human response. Just know that. That is a normal human response. And it doesn't state this in my book, but in the article in the book that I read by the man that I mentioned there, and I can't remember, it's Casipio, I think, it mentioned that the reason is because being ousted from the tribe, being excluded from the tribe, meant a certain death. It meant death was inevitable because you could not survive without the village. You could not survive without the tribe. It's impossible in those days, or even, like I said, even most recently in the past 100 years, it was impossible to survive. So the fact that we are now experiencing a lot more, you hear a lot more mental health problems and sadness and everything. Just know that that is normal. Your brain is normal. So I don't want you ever to think for a moment, if I'm feeling socially isolated, if I'm feeling sad and depressed, and I lack motivation because I've just been alone and I'm sick of it, you're a normal human being. That's not abnormal. That is actually normal. So I just wanted to confirm that to you, because it's something that I have been feeling at many periods during 2020. And in fact, that's why I opted to go out to different meetup groups and do hiking and all that and just interact with people, because I know that being in social groups is a normal part of being human, and it's really an important part of being human. Otherwise, your brain starts to shut down that aspect, and depression is very inevitable no matter how mentally healthy you are on a normal basis. So just know that. So if you are not following through with your goals because of isolation, being demotivated because you've been depressed during quarantine and during 2020, just know that you can always start to reconnect with groups on Zoom. There are many meetup groups that happen on Zoom. And of course, now the tables are starting to turn, because we're entering into this new era, we're entering into this new age, and also, you know, there's some medical help that's on the horizon there. But I just wanted to confirm that with you, that if you haven't been feeling as motivated, it's normal, but also try to think for the future as we are moving through this mini time period of transition. Like, it's not going to be long now before we're going to be able to be with others and be with family members and friends and all of that. I hope that you have certainly been staying committed, at least in part, to your 5 commitments that you've been making. For me, I did much better this week than I did the previous week. And I think I mentioned that week 2 into that was kind of hard for me. There was a lot going on, but this week was actually better. While there was still a lot going on, I looked at most of my goals. It was 4 out of 7 days were actually perfect. So for most of the goals, 4 out of 7 days were perfect. The meditation goal was 7 out of 7. And in fact, most days I was meditating for an hour and a half a day rather than the hour a day that I had previously committed to. The calorie count has been a little bit all over the place. It's been up and down. Now, it hasn't been abusive as far as exceeding and just sitting down and eating gobs of food. That hasn't been the case. What has been the case, though, is that on average, I guess I set my height, the highest amount, at around 1,500 calories a day, and which seems like not a lot of food. But when you're on a weight loss program, it's usually, and for my height and weight, it's usually a kind of around that, if not a little bit lower. But I've been around 1,650 calories a day. That's where it's been at. But there was a day, and I think it was 2 days, that I really met my goal for calories, and then under that. And then the other 5 days, I was around that 1,600 calorie mark. So slightly above what I want, but not as disastrous had I not been counting those calories, which we all know how disastrous that can get if that is one of your goals. That if you're not paying attention to portion size, if you're not paying attention to what's going inside of your mouth, it can get out of control very, very quickly, especially if you're not moving a lot and you're at home and the fridge is right there. I'm really excited about the upcoming week. Of course, this is Christmas week for me and for you. If you practice that, if that is one of your holidays that you celebrate, then you know as well as I do that all eating plans tend to go out the window, as they should. So in the 3 days of the holiday celebration, which I anticipate at this point it's going to last 3 days at least, I am not going to pay attention to what I eat. I'm going to pay attention leading up to it and after it. But for the 24th, 25th, 26th, I'm just going to let loose. That's it. However, what I believe will keep me sane is having all the other practices. So doing my exercise program, burning the calories, doing yoga and meditation, and of course, giving giving, you guys. Giving is the most wonderful thing in the world. And that is one of my goals, is to be able to have those random acts of kindness and to be able to give. And I believe I mentioned to you last week that that was one big struggle for me, being isolated, being alone. And I rectified that by baking goods and sending goods to family members. Like, that was one of my things, is that I'm like, okay, well, what can I do? Well, I'm here in my apartment and I can bake. So that's what I did. And I spent a lot of time baking. Baking is very time consuming. So I spent a lot of time doing that. So I hope that this motivated you to get up off your booty and do something. Get motivated. Make a commitment to yourself and to your life, because this is only the beginning. This is the beginning, you guys. This is the beginning to you taking charge of your life. And it's not the big things that make a difference. It really isn't. It's the steps that make a difference. It's the everyday commitment to yourself and to your life that makes a total difference. And that's what I have found. I have found for my life that, honestly, it's the little things that make big things. It's the little steps that create these enormous goals. So if I can be committed to my life today, if I can be committed to everything that I want to do today, then 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you will see enormous results. And even 12 months down the road, you'll see a huge result in the things that you've stayed committed to. So don't think it has to be anything huge. Make 5 commitments to yourself every single day and follow through. You owe it to yourself. So have a very, very Merry Christmas for my friends who celebrate Christmas. I don't know when Hanukkah is. I'm sorry, I did not even look at the calendar. I just sat down to do this video. So if Hanukkah's already passed, those of you that celebrate Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. And I'm wishing you guys all the best for the holiday season with you and your family. I will give you another update after the Christmas holiday, and I'm wishing you all the best, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.